I'm Dr. Mark Sherwood, and I'm challenging Kevin Stitt in the GOP primary on June 28th. As your next governor, I welcome you back to our discussions of each of the 27 amendments to the United States Constitution. Today, we will address three of the weightiest amendments relevant to civil rights and civil liberties. On January the 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation declaring slavery illegal everywhere in the United States of America. 4 years of civil war followed before the Union was restored. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were issued in the 1860s, decade of the Civil War era, and immediate aftermath. The next amendment did not come until over 40 years later in the 20th century. Let's look at Amendment 13. It abolishes slavery and involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime. Ratified December the 6th, 1865. In our day and age, it is difficult to see things through the lens of historical perspective. Slavery has always been morally wrong. Whether it should have been prohibited when the Constitution was originally ratified is a divisive argument which will not lead to the healing of America. Now, slavery has long been gone on as the scourge that it was upon the face of our nation. In his inspirational I Have a Dream speech on August 28, 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. envisioned an America where little white children and black children would play together. He did not want segregation or America torn apart at the seams. Now, almost 60 years later, a new generation of Americans needs to restore our relationships with one another. We don't need critical race theory ascribing guilt upon Americans of any skin color. This is the absolute antithesis of Dr. King's dream for what he sacrificed his life for the country he loved. The 13th Amendment is about slavery, but that is not the only kind of divisiveness in our society that exists today. I want to take just a moment to address the United States Supreme Court decision from July the 9th, 2020 in the case of McGirt versus Oklahoma. The descendants of black slaves do play a part in that case, which was an affirmation that treaties with indigenous tribes are the supreme law of the land under Article 6 of the United States Constitution. As Trump nominee Justice Neil Gorsuch so eloquently declared in the majority decision in that case, on the far end of the Trail of Tears was a promise. Democrat President Andrew Jackson in the Indian Removal Act had coveted and stolen original homelands of 5 southeastern tribes and relocated them forcibly to Indian territory. In 1866, a treaty between the United States government and the Muskogee, the Creek Nation, still exists, and the reservation has never been de-established. Courts have ruled that other tribes in Oklahoma remain sovereign under their treaties. The tribes were promised they would never be made part of any state or union. Governor Kevin Stitt has steadfastly refused to sit down at the table and discuss our mutually amenable path forward with the chiefs and leadership of the tribes. As your next governor, my door will always be open. Face-to-face personal meetings will be held regularly. In the context of the 13th Amendment, there are certain members of the Biden administration and the United States Congress who are trying to exercise federal overreach by imposing their template upon the tribes in Oklahoma. They are saying that all federal funds for the tribes come with strings attached and that freedmen, the descendants of black slaves who lived among the tribes, are entitled to tribal citizenship along with indigenous descendants with native bloodline. As governor of Oklahoma, my position is that it is not the right of the United States federal government or myself to dictate to the tribes whom they determined to be their own citizens. That is an internal matter which I will fully respect. As soon as all of us in America, here in Oklahoma, love and respect one another as members of the human race, we will live together as persons. We will also recognize the unique rights of original inhabitants and owners of this land. We're all blessed that the tribes are excellent hosts and neighbors, and that we are all Oklahomans. Amendment 14, ratified July the 9th, 1868, defines citizenship, contains the Privileges or Immunities Clause, the Due Process Clause, and the Equal Protection Clause, and deals with post-Civil War issues. There is much in this 14th Amendment that could require not just a major essay, but a multi-volume work of scholarship. In our discussion today, we'll focus on the essential elements. Section 1 provides that no state shall deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Section 2 was passed in the immediate context of Reconstruction and the restoration of citizens of the states which had seceded to form the Confederacy. Section 3 also had to do with those from the former Confederate states and how they would be reintegrated into the United States of America at the end of the Civil War. Section 4 was concerned with making the national debt sacrosanct and repudiating the Confederate debt. Section 5 says the Congress shall have the power to enforce, by appropriate legislation, the provisions of this article. Today, we especially appreciate the fact that the 14th Amendment granted U.S. citizenship to all persons born and naturalized in the United States, including former black slaves, and guaranteed to all citizens equal protection under the law. Today, we in Oklahoma respect one another and do not differentiate upon race or ethnicity. This is not to be confused with treaties between the United States government and the sovereign tribes, which are the supreme law of the land. The current governor of Oklahoma is totally confused and misguided in saying that the McGirt decision is about race. Nothing could be farther from the truth. It affirms the treaties between the United States and sovereign indigenous nations. Indian country is a legal term defined under statute. As Oklahoma governor, I will reestablish relationships that have been severed during the tenure of Kevin Stitt. He obviously does not understand the United States Constitution and all of its amendments. That's why it's so important for us to discuss them together. Amendment 15. It was ratified on February the 3rd, 1870. Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Section 2. The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. This is a defining element of our society. The scourge of slavery was ended. After the ravages of civil war, society was restored. Prior evils were renounced. It is important that we not try to erase our history. Tearing down statues and renaming military bases is not going to change history. It's far better that we teach the next generation of Oklahomans what mistakes were made in the past and what actions were taken to remedy them so that we never repeat them in the future. Thank you once again for joining us as we look at all the amendments to the U.S. Constitution. We will continue in our next talk.